It's the holiday season and everything revolves around food and food and food
with a side of food.
with a side of food. Welcome, everybody. I'm Abby Gardner. On this episode of Plate and Palate with Megan and Abby, we are going to be spending some time talking about food and the holidays and what to do with leftovers and how to navigate holiday parties. So, be sure to tune in. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Megan real quick.
You bet. Hi there. I am Megan McGee. I am the owner of Nourish Nutrition Consulting and a registered dietetic tech, and I love supporting clients with healthy living. And one of my biggest takeaways is even though we are embracing the season of food, there's still so many ways we can navigate from a healthful perspective, but still get to enjoy. So finding that middle ground. And today we're going to be talking more around the lens of Thanksgiving. And I'm excited to share more tips as we go around just really being successful this holiday season.
Awesome. So I don't know about you, but I have a couple questions. Thanksgiving leftovers. Okay. Do you I hear from clients every year, what do I do with the leftovers? What do I do with the leftovers? What kind of leftovers are we talking about here, Megan? Because
Mhm.
in my house, the good stuff gets eaten. Now, good stuff in my house may look different than what the good stuff looks like in your house. Or if you're watching this, the good stuff, how do you define the good stuff?
Mhm.
So I never really know how to answer that question because I don't really know what people mean. Do
Mhm.
you mean leftover turkey? Do you mean the leftover random gravy that's
Mhm.
in your refrigerator that's gotten coagulated because it's been chilled and
Mhm.
you don't know what to do with it?
Mhm. Yep, and you're right too. And so two questions within that, Abby, you bet. Is it the volume of food? Oh my gosh, we had way too much turkey and now it's turkey for 2 weeks and we can't stand any more turkey? Or you're right, is it kind of those random loose ends, whether it's individual ingredients or just those random sides that really didn't get eaten? And now what do we do? Right?
Yeah, totally. So I think we should maybe talk to both sides of that
Yeah.
and see if we can't come up between the two of us with some brilliance to share.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
Why don't
Awesome.
we start with the idea of just too much
Too much.
leftovers? Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. I am always, there are also, sorry, I'm gonna just make thicken the plot here, right? This is what I do. I'm a rebel.
Right.
A lot of, I shouldn't say that. I have a perception that may be inaccurate, but if you're feeding a lot of people, you tend to overbuy
Mhm.
because you don't know what people
Mhm.
are going to eat or how much people are going to eat.
Mhm.
And most of us are not super well versed
Mhm.
in, you know, figuring out how many ounces of turkey per person.
Right.
You call Butterball and you ask them and they tell you 1.5 pounds per person,
Uh-huh.
or you just follow that guideline. But
Right.
what if people don't eat all the turkey?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's the issue of overbuying. So this is going to sound very what's the word? There's a word called chutzpah. I'm just going to say that it kind of takes some chutzpah to do this,
Yeah.
but if you have extra groceries laying around that did not get opened, did not get touched, did not, um, you're not going to use them. You're not going to use them. You can return them
Mhm.
to the store.
Right.
So that is always something to keep in the back of your mind. And yeah, it sounds kind of cringy to do
Mhm.
that, but I'll raise my hand. I have done it
Mhm.
because I've had parties where we've got three or four extras of something that I bought too much of. And I know A, I don't want it in my house.
Right.
And B, no, I tried pawning it off on people. I
Mhm.
mean,
Right.
you go down your list.
Right.
So that's an option. You could take back whatever you don't use.
Mhm.
The other option is, think about your Christmas or your New Year's menu
How to move it
and
over.
maybe incorporate some of it
Yeah.
into that next
Mhm.
meal.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
great one.
so there's that. So if we're talking about excess, now
Hmm.
if it's been cooked and there's excess, what do you do with it after 2 or 3 days when everyone is over turkey?
Hmm.
Everyone is over the heaviness. You and I were talking off camera about that. The heaviness.
Hmm.
Thanksgiving is laden with carbs,
So heavy.
and you're ready to have something more healthy.
Right.
So if it's a turkey situation, if you're just overloaded with turkey, you can, and I encourage you to throw some in a Ziploc bag and throw it in the freezer,
Hmm.
because in a month you might be craving some turkey, and it's super easy to just wrap it up in saran wrap or whatever, and pop it in a zip top bag and get all the air out and put it in the freezer for future, right?
Sure.
You can designate it. And then there's the random turkey parts like the one turkey leg that you bought for your 5-year-old nephew, who you thought for sure was going to be so excited to eat it, and he didn't want any part of it. So then now you have this dark meat, which is kind of drying out on the bone. What do you do with it? Um, Please don't hate me, people who are watching this, but soup. And I hear you.
Absolutely.
I hear you. No, not soup. Here's but here's my argument. You can throw all of the random fresh stuff, like whatever's left that didn't get used for whatever reason. Maybe you bought 2 pounds of green beans and you have a half a pound of them left, and you're like, this isn't enough for everybody. I don't know what I'm going to do with these.
Mhm.
Everything goes in the pot. The turkey bone, the meat, the vegetables, all of it. You throw in some water, a little bit of salt and pepper, and we're going to talk about spices here soon. And throw in some sage, some thyme, rosemary, salt, pepper, and just let it simmer all day. Your house will smell amazing. And then you cool it, you freeze it. You don't eat it right away. No
Mhm.
one wants to eat any of this right away. That's the disclaimer. You
Mhm.
don't, but you're saving it for another time. Flu season's coming, right? If you get sick in January, you have soup on hand to help you get better.
Mhm.
And there are health benefits to turkey soup. It doesn't have to be chicken.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
And
be
Abby,
quiet.
no, that was great. And you and I were talking offline too that, I was sharing that at the end of gardening season, I ended up with
Mm,
a random hodgepodge of vegetables. And, I had two carrots that were only this big. So I'm not going to make a dish with carrots that are only this big, right? I had some broccoli that was on its way out. I had some tomatoes, both that were too ripe and that were still green. And I threw it all in, and it was the most delicious soup. And I could really tell the difference because it was so fresh, noticeably. And
yeah.
I think this is, that we hit the wall after 3 days or four
Yeah.
days or 5 days, whatever your pain point is with
Yeah.
turkey. We hit the wall where we can't see beyond that. And you're so right, Abby. If we can, either make these foods into a different form, or like we're talking about, throw it all in the pot, make a soup, make a stew, save it for later. In 2 weeks from Thanksgiving, a month from Thanksgiving, you're going to be like, oh man, that soup sounded really good now. And then you have it.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm also mentioning soup, Megan, because it's easy
It's
and
so
it doesn't
easy.
require, I think people think soup and they're like, oh my gosh, that's going to take so much time. No, it's not, because
Mhm.
you're just going to throw everything in. You're not even really having to slice or dice, because
Mhm.
as things cook, it's going to break down
Right.
and you don't even have to worry about it. So
And it's great again for the hodgepodge. I've got these 3 carrots. I've got half a cup of green beans. I've got one turnip or parsnip, right? Throw it all in.
yeah,
And especially for someone who's used to cooking by a recipe and specific portions and ratios. That's the beauty of a soup. Throw it all in. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
You cannot mess up a soup. You cannot.
Mm, it's
So
so easy.
for the purposes of this conversation, I am going to really be a proponent of just throw it all in a pot
Yeah.
and call it a day.
Set it and forget it.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
those are some, that's one angle you can take for you know, an excess of all the things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, if we're talking about an excess of things like um sweet potato casserole or
Mhm.
green bean casserole or stuffing, that kind of thing, um, you you could do kind of like a shepherd's pie of sorts, where you
Mhm.
build the layers with those random remaining ingredients.
Mhm.
Maybe you throw in, you know, that dried out dark meat instead of using the white meat, or, you know, if you use the white meat in the soup and you've got the dark meat, throw the dark meat in with the
Right.
shepherd's pie. But all shepherd's pie is, everybody, is a mixture of vegetables
Mhm.
topped with a layer of mashed potatoes.
Right.
And who says that it can't be mashed sweet potatoes?
Right.
Now, if it's the sweet potato casserole that's laden with the brown sugar and the butter, and you've got that crusty marshmallow top,
Mhm.
get rid of the marshmallows. Nobody's going to miss the marshmallows.
Yeah. The first
But
2 days, it's delicious, but after that, it's just so heavy.
right,
So
right,
heavy.
right. So scrape all the marshmallows off and use those sweet potatoes as the potato layer
Mhm.
for the shepherd's pie.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter if there's pecans in the sweet potatoes.
That's
I can already hear people, but I put
uh-huh.
pecans. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
Mhm.
Use it. Nobody's going to know it's in there unless you make it a proclamation that it's in there. And it'll be amazing and delicious and have a little extra crunch.
Mhm.
So that's another way to use up some extras
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah.
Um, use up the extras and use up some of the random
Mhm.
weird things that might still be laying around in the kitchen. But
Absolutely.
I want to swing back the pendulum to the other side of this question that I posed, which is, what do you do with the leftovers nobody wants?
Mhm.
Like, Megan and I had this conversation right before we came on camera, and she said Jello mold. And I'm going to be honest, you guys, please, if you do a Jello mold, don't take offense to this.
Good for you if
But
you do.
right, but I kind of threw up in my mouth a little bit when she said that, because I grew up, my mom used to have those Tupperware Jello molds,
Totally.
and she used to make this cranberry one with carrots, and
Uh,
um I never liked the look of it, and I would never eat it. And I'm even in my mind's eye as we're talking, I'm like, I can't. I
mm-mm.
can't. So it's
Yeah.
those kinds of things, like, what do you do with those things?
Right.
And that, you know, I don't know that you or I, Megan, came up with any good
Not
answer for
really.
that, you know?
The only things that I think of, number one is, again, something that is so unique in that way, the Jello mold, right? The first thing that comes to my mind is ice cube trays, right? That's always a
Yeah,
good go-to if you have the random things.
right.
I don't know. I don't even know if Jello mold
Well,
freezes well. I would,
you know, no, I don't know if it does either, but something that just kind of came to mind is when you're making the Jello mold, maybe try to consider ahead of time how much it makes, and maybe make a little less,
sure, target your
or
audience.
cut the recipe in half.
Half.
If you historically make this, maybe it's a traditional, maybe it's something that's a food that's like a recipe that's been handed down through generations. And
Hmm.
as the generations have evolved, the Jello mold remains on the table, but far fewer people eat it.
Hmm.
So, you know, maybe don't make as much.
Sure.
Or, and this is going to sound crazy, but come up with a way to do Jello shots. Like, and I don't mean like spiked Jello shots, but
Uh,
maybe make it more fun, make it so that everyone gets a taster in the shot glass,
mhm.
and then you're on to the next thing, and then you're not having to worry.
about
about
this big mold.
what to do with half of the Jello mold
Right.
that didn't get
Yeah.
eaten, that maybe you don't
Uh-huh.
really even like yourself, but
Right.
it's
And
there.
and I think what happens is there is the pan that's the Jello mold pan, and it's this big, so that's just
Right.
what you make.
You could do maybe try making the Jello mold in a mini muffin tin or in a loaf pan. Oh, that sounds even worse. Never mind. But
Right.
you
Yeah,
get
smaller. The portion. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
you know, even doing individual portions with a pan that you already have for
Right.
maybe brownies or something. And now a lot of those pans are being made out of silicone,
Right.
so it's
Right.
not as complicated as using a
Sure.
metal pan.
Sure.
But I would I would I would tend to go more that route
Hmm.
if I had to if there was some sort of family
Hmm.
recipe that
Sure.
has to be on the table because it's a nod to Aunt
Tradition.
Irma, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I'll just speak to it from this side too. We're in our videos to come through this season, we're going to talk a lot about how to navigate the holidays. And there's one more layer that I'll add. At the end of the day, from a health perspective, if you eat something a couple of times and you're just over it, and it's also not necessarily the most nutrient dense, it's high in sugar, it's high in carb, or it's just really cheesy, bready, heavy, it is what it is. Be done with it. So the Jello
Yeah.
mold, if only a quarter of it gets eaten and that's what it is, oh well,
So be it. So
right?
be it.
Because I also
Yeah.
don't want people to force themselves to eat something that they don't enjoy. That's always one of my biggest um, campaigns, if you will. If you're not getting enjoyment out of it, if you're not actually enjoying it, getting pleasure, then don't eat it. Don't waste the calories, especially when we're moving into the season of food, which is more food. Mhm.
Absolutely. That's a
Yeah,
great tip.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. And then I have a few things to share too in that way. And so I thought I would share a little bit more around recipes and spices just a little bit and just to open some of the creative side of things. And again, I think so often we get fixated that turkey just has to look like turkey. We serve it with the mashed potatoes and the green bean casserole, and that's the only way to serve it. And then that's also why by day three, we're like, oh my goodness, no more. Our palate is saturated, right? Things that I think of. Again, we're gonna do a dance this holiday season of how to enjoy, how to think differently about food. And one of the best things I always think about is can we spice our foods differently to have a different experience? So, is there a way to have turkey spiced or prepared differently on day three, day four, so it looks and feels different than day one and day two? And therefore, we're not just getting burnt out. And one of my favorite spices this time of year is sage. And the funny part of this is sometimes, even in the world of nutrition that I play in, sometimes I feel like I'm a little late to the party, but sage is my new favorite spice in the fall. And this is a new one for me. And yes, I've had sage, through the years, but I just have never really kept it in my pantry or never really cooked with it. And the other thing is I didn't realize all the health value of sage. So I was curious and I looked it up. Sage is a major antioxidant. It's anti-inflammatory. It's been researched for women around menopause, hot flashes, night sweats. It helps with clearing the lungs. So if someone's having bronchial issues, it's been shown to help blood sugar, improve cholesterol, reducing total cholesterol, improving HDL, the high or the good cholesterol. It helps digestion. I had no idea all the value of sage. There's so many spices that I will tell clients, ooh, yes, cinnamon, great spice, right? And I never think of sage. And so this is such a good spice, especially around poultry. So turkey and sage have such a good combination there. But I'll also share with you one of my favorite recipes. So the cookbook that I love the most is called the Ultra Metabolism Cookbook. It's by Dr. Mark Hyman. Maybe some of you are familiar with Dr. Hyman. He is an amazing man. He's extremely engaged in this world of functional medicine, preventative health. getting to the root and not just managing or masking symptoms or masking disease with medication. He has been a pioneer in the energy of functional medicine and getting to the root and thinking about how much lifestyle impacts us. And so in this cookbook, and I am not paid to promote this, just to be clear, but it really is my personal favorite cookbook. I recommend it all the time. There is a recipe called cranberry pecan wild rice salad. It's so easy. And I'll just also give you a quick thought too. You can dial up your measurements of where you want to push harder. So they promote this, or it's been written as a rice salad. I'm going to tell you the ingredients here in a minute, but I often dial the rice down and dial the other ingredients up. So again, if you have a lot of turkey, pair it with the rice, but dial the amount of rice down and dial up that turkey. So you can play with the measurements. So long and short, and they call it a salad. I just think of it like a bowl, if you will. It's all put together. So the ingredients are straightforward: wild rice, carrots, onion, red onion specifically, turkey, pecans, and dried cranberries. Super yummy, right? These are already things that maybe we have, pardon me, with it being Thanksgiving, or not very cost prohibitive either. All right, we got all this turkey. I got to run to the store and buy an onion and some carrots. Cool, easy, right? The dressing is so delicious, and I put this on a lot of things through the fall and into the winter months. It's oil, Dijon mustard, apple cider vinegar, fresh sage, fresh thyme. I just honestly do the dried sage. It's delicious, so easy. And that it becomes like a vinaigrette, but it's really warm, like the apple cider vinegar. I love the kind of bite of the mustard, a little salty with that too. And then that sage just makes it pop. Super easy, takes maybe 15 minutes to put together. Depends how long your rice might cook, but otherwise to put everything together, 15 minutes. And I like to make it right when I'm ready to eat so that the rice is warm. And it doesn't call to do this because the recipe talks about doing it as a kind of a cold salad. I like it warm. So I will often, once my rice is done on the stove, I throw everything in that same pan, stir it all together, kind of let it sit for maybe 5 minutes just to warm it. It's not hot. Again, I don't always love to reheat turkey too hot because it just dries it out more. So maybe a couple minutes just to bring it up to warm. But it's just hearty, it's warm, it feels more nourishing. And again, I do a lot more carrot with it, maybe a little bit heavier onion in an appropriate balance, but I really drive that carrot, kind of pull the rice down, drive the turkey. So you can play with the measurements, is my point. You could have it just as it is. But it's a really lovely way to step away from my plate is just turkey, mashed potatoes, and green bean casserole for the fifth day, right?
I'll also interject, like that sounds like it's versatile enough. Like if you didn't have wild rice, you could make or not couscous, you could make quinoa.
Quinoa, brown
Or
rice,
if you were just turkeyed out,
right?
you could put salmon on there
Absolutely be
or
delicious.
chicken or
Yeah.
so there's a
That
lot of
vinaigrette on the,
variety.
yeah, on the vinaigrette. So the apple cider vinegar and mustard,
Yeah,
think
that'd be
about that.
great on
That's
salmon.
foundation for really any vinaigrette is often those two ingredients. So
Yeah.
even if you were to put that on the fish, just as an example, marinate the fish in it, and then put that over a mix of wild rice, brown rice, whatever you have in the pantry, some dried cranberries, some crushed pecans, yummy,
Yeah.
delicious.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'd throw some arugula in there too.
Oh yeah,
That would
yeah,
be amazing with some
right.
arugula. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just lends itself to creativity in the kitchen. Like, what
Uh-huh.
else can I throw in with this? Sounds
Yeah.
really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's often one of my tips as I work with clients is looking at a recipe. If we're just trying to think from a healthy lens. So let's say we've had, the turkey, the mashed potatoes, the green beans for 4 days, and we just feel so heavy, right? Can we adjust a recipe to maybe dial down the carb load and drive up the protein and veggies so it doesn't feel so heavy? So you're right, throwing some arugula in there, throw some spinach on top and let it wilt, right? Again, I do a much heavier carrot load. They call for half a cup of grated carrots. I do maybe 2, 3 cups of carrots. I like the crunch. And so, um, can you just play with your measurements and create a meal out of it that just doesn't feel so heavy and rich after a holiday like that?
Yeah, love that.
Yay! Well, we hope that this has been informative, and please feel free to message us and answer our question. What do you struggle with? Is it more the volume of food? Is it more, what do I do with the random Jello mold 3 days later, right? Let us know. And then also feel free to share tips that you have implemented
Yeah.
as your go-tos um, to help use up those leftovers.
Yeah, I would love to learn from everyone who's tuning in because I'm sure you have some tips that maybe Megan and I don't know.
Yeah,
And I would love to learn what you do.
absolutely. Awesome. Well, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. We're so grateful for all of you. Thanks for tuning in.